My fiancé texted me in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. Not good morning, not I miss you, not even what's for dinner tonight. I met with a lawyer today to understand how your inheritance works after we're married. I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. I was sitting at my desk, half listening to a project update I'd already memorized, fingers hovering uselessly above my keyboard. Around me, coworkers talked, laughed, complained about deadlines. Life kept moving like nothing had just shifted under my feet. I typed back one word: smart. Then I excused myself, walked into the stairwell, and called my dad. Hey, Dad, I said, keeping my voice steady. I need to talk to you about something, and I need you to not interrupt me. There was a pause on the line, the kind that tells you someone already knows this isn't small. I told him about the text, about my fiancé meeting with a lawyer, his lawyer, about money that wasn't mine, about inheritance that didn't even exist yet, about how it made my stomach drop in a way I couldn't explain without sounding paranoid. When I finished, my dad didn't get angry. He didn't yell. He didn't ask me if I was sure. He just said quietly, "What do you want to do?" I took a breath. My hands were shaking. I pressed them against the concrete wall. "I want you to temporarily remove me from the will," I said, "just until I understand who I'm marrying." Silence. Then, come by the office after work. By the time I got home that night, my dad had already called his lawyer. Within 48 hours, I no longer stood to inherit a single dollar from my family. Everything would go to my younger sister if something happened to our parents. It was airtight, legal, reversible. And my fiancé? He came home that evening relaxed, scrolling on his phone, talking about practical things, guest count, timelines, whether we should lock in the venue deposit that week. He didn't mention the lawyer. Not once. I smiled. I nodded. I listened. I played my part. And as he talked about our future, all I could think was this. He had already started planning for a future where my parents were gone, and he was entitled to what they left behind. I just hadn't told him yet that there would be nothing to claim. I was 29 when I got engaged, and by then, my life already felt settled. Not flashy, not impressive in a way people post about online, but stable, built with intention. I worked as a project manager at a mid-sized construction firm, long hours, tight deadlines, steady pay. I liked knowing where my money went. Rent, savings, groceries, a little set aside for travel, a little for emergencies. Control, earned slowly. I met my fiancé 3 years earlier through mutual friends at a casual dinner party. He wasn't loud or magnetic in the room. He didn't need to be. He had that easy confidence that comes from never having truly worried about money, but also never talking about it directly. He asked smart questions, listened more than he spoke. When he laughed, it felt unforced. We took things slow at first. Dates after work, weekend hikes, cooking simple meals at my place before he eventually moved in. He was consistent, reliable, the kind of man who showed up when he said he would, paid his share without reminders, fixed small things around the apartment without making a show of it. When we decided to live together a year and a half in, it felt like the natural next step, not a leap. We split bills evenly, shared a calendar, planned months ahead. We talked about kids in abstract terms, about careers, about where we might live one day. Marriage came up gradually. Not a dramatic proposal story. No crowd, no spectacle, just a quiet evening at home. He'd cook dinner. I noticed he was nervous before he even opened his mouth, shoulders tight, jaw set. When he asked, it wasn't rehearsed, just honest. I said yes without hesitation. Our families approved quickly. My parents liked him, said he was solid. His parents were polite, welcoming. His mom hugged me like we'd known each other longer than we had. His dad shook my hand, firm grip, steady eye contact. The wedding was planned for next spring. We agreed early we'd pay for it ourselves. Nothing extravagant. A venue we liked. A guest list trimmed down after the usual negotiations. 15,000 total. A number we were comfortable with. I never hid the fact that my family was comfortable. My dad owns a plumbing business. Not glamorous, not tech money, just decades of steady work, starting from nothing. My grandfather had left a few properties behind when he passed. Between that, my parents' savings, and investments, there was security. But it wasn't my money. I never talked about inheritance like it was guaranteed, because it wasn't. Because it felt morbid, like counting something that only comes after loss. At first, my fiancé didn't ask much. Just general curiosity. What my dad did, how long he'd been in business, normal questions, the kind anyone asks when they're getting to know your family. But something shifted after the engagement. Subtle at first, comments about long-term planning, about protecting ourselves, about how marriage changes things legally. He didn't push. He never demanded. He framed it as responsibility. At the time, I told myself this was what adulthood looked like. Two people thinking ahead, being smart. I didn't see it as a warning. I saw it as commitment. And looking back now, that's what makes it sting the most. Because nothing in our past felt fake, which meant whatever was coming wasn't an accident. It was a choice. The first warning signs didn't arrive loudly. They slipped in quietly, disguised as reasonable questions and casual observations, things you could easily dismiss if you weren't looking for them. It started with timing. After we got engaged, my fiancé suddenly became more interested in conversations that stretched far beyond our usual routines. Not emotional talks, not relationship check-ins, practical ones, legal ones, financial ones. One night after dinner, he leaned back on the couch, arms crossed, eyes on the ceiling like he was working through a problem. "Marriage changes a lot of things legally," he said. "People don't really think about that until it's too late." I nodded. "Sure." He glanced at me. "Have you ever talked to your parents about estate planning?" The question landed heavier than it should have. "Not really," I said. "Why would I?" He shrugged. "Just curious. It's smart to know these things." I let it go. Another evening, while we were reviewing the guest list, he made an offhand comment. "Your dad's business is still going strong, right?" "Yeah." "Ever talk about succession planning?" I looked up from my laptop. "Why are you asking?" He gave a small smile. "I like understanding how things work." At the time, I believed him. Then came the comparisons. Little remarks slipped into conversation like jokes, but didn't quite land as jokes. My coworker's parents set up a trust before she got married. Took a lot of pressure off. Some people really get screwed in divorces if they don't plan ahead. Your sister seems pretty carefree. Hope your parents have things structured. Each comment on its own meant nothing. Together, they formed a pattern. I started noticing how his tone changed when money came up. He wasn't greedy. He didn't sound desperate. It was something colder, calculated, like he was running numbers quietly in his head. Still, I didn't confront him. Part of me didn't want to sound suspicious. Another part didn't want to admit that the thought had even crossed my mind. Then came the text. Not emotional, not dramatic. Just informative. "I met with a lawyer today to understand how your inheritance works after we're married." No warning, no conversation beforehand. No, "Hey, can we talk about this?" He had already taken the step. After that, the shift became impossible to ignore. He didn't bring the meeting up again, but his behavior changed. He started talking about protection more, about how fairness matters in marriage, about how prenups can be complicated if only one person has assets, especially future ones. One morning over breakfast, he said casually, "We should probably discuss estate planning soon." I watched him stir his coffee. Calm, unbothered. "What kind of planning?" I asked. "You know," he said, "long-term stuff, making sure we're both secure." Secure. The word stuck with me all day, because nothing about our life felt insecure. We both worked, we paid our bills, we had savings, we weren't struggling. So what exactly was he afraid of losing? Or worse, what was he planning around? That's when I stopped responding with answers and started responding with neutrality. "Dad's got it handled. I'm happy with my job. We'll figure it out later." I kept my voice light, non-committal. And every time I did, I could see it, just briefly. The flicker of frustration in his eyes, the wheels turning, the realization that I wasn't giving him the information he wanted. I didn't know yet how far this would go, but by then, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't curiosity anymore. It was strategy. The real break didn't happen in a dramatic argument. It happened in silence. Thursday evening, I came home to find my fiancé on the couch, with his laptop open, posture slightly forward, shoulders tense in a way I'd learned to recognize. Focused, guarded. He didn't look up right away. "Long day?" I asked, dropping my bag by the door. "Yeah," he said. "You?" "Same. Normal. Too normal." We ate dinner, talked about schedules, weekend plans, nothing about lawyers, nothing about money. He laughed at something on his phone. I matched his energy, played the role. Later that night, while I was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the counter. Once, then again. I didn't touch it. I didn't look. But when I came out, wrapped in a towel, he was already holding the phone, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the screen. When he noticed me, he turned slightly away. "What's up?" I asked. "Work," he said quickly. I nodded, let it pass. The next morning, over breakfast, he finally said it. We should talk about a prenup. The words landed flat. Practiced. Okay, I replied. What brought this on? He took a sip of coffee, avoided my eyes. Just thinking about our future, making sure we're both protected. Protected from what? He hesitated, fingers tightening around the mug. You know, worst-case scenarios. Okay, I said evenly. Then we should both get lawyers and draft something fair. That's when his face changed. Not anger, not sadness. Disappointment. Both, he asked. Yes, I said, independent representation. That's how prenups work. He looked down at the table, exhaled slowly. We could use the same lawyer, save money. No, I said, that wouldn't be appropriate. He didn't argue, but something closed off in him. That afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was at work. A call from his mother. I stared at the screen before answering. Hi, I said cautiously. Her voice came through warm but tight. I'm just worried about him. He's been so stressed lately. About what? I asked. The wedding, the future, the pressure you're putting on him. I leaned back in my chair. What pressure? Well, she said carefully, marriage means sharing everything, trusting each other completely. I agree. So why are you making money such a big issue? She asked. I closed my eyes. I didn't, I said. He met with a lawyer about my family's inheritance without talking to me first. There was a pause. That's just him being responsible, she replied. Men like to plan. Plan? That night, we went to dinner at his parents' house. I realized quickly it wasn't just a family meal. His father sat at the head of the table, arms crossed. His brother leaned back in his chair, smirk already in place. His mother started it. So, she said, we should talk about the wedding budget. We already agreed on $15,000, I said, and we're paying for it ourselves. Well, she replied, that was before we really understood your family's situation. The room went quiet. What situation? I asked. My fiancé shifted beside me. Mom. It's reasonable, she continued, to expect your family to contribute more. We're not traditional, I said calmly, and we're not asking for help. His brother snorted. Must be nice, keeping all that family money while your future husband worries about stability. I set my fork down. He's not worrying about stability, I said. We're both employed. We're fine. But with what you'll inherit, his mother began. I'm not inheriting anything, I said. Dead silence. My fiancé turned to me sharply. What? I had myself temporarily removed from my parents' will earlier this week, I said. Seemed responsible before getting married. The explosion was immediate. You did what? He snapped. When were you going to tell me? His mother demanded. Why would I said evenly. It's my parents' money. It doesn't affect us. This is insane, his brother said. You can't just disinherit yourself. Actually, I replied, I already did. My fiancé stood up. We need to leave, now. The car ride home was silent. The moment the door closed behind us, he turned on me. How could you do this without discussing it with me? I met his eyes. The same way you met with a lawyer about my inheritance without discussing it with me. The apartment felt smaller the moment we stepped inside. He dropped his keys onto the counter harder than necessary. The sound echoed, sharp, accusatory. You blindsided me, he said, pacing once before stopping in front of me. You made a massive decision without even talking to me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move. I responded to a decision you already made, I said. You met with a lawyer about my family's money, without me. That wasn't... He stopped himself, ran a hand through his hair. I was just getting information. Information about money that isn't yours, I replied, and may never be mine. His jaw tightened. We're getting married. It would be ours. No, I said. Inheritance is separate property unless it's commingled. Your lawyer should have told you that. He looked away. The silence stretched, thick, heavy. I was thinking about our future, he said finally. Security matters. We're secure, I said. We both work. We have savings. What we don't have, apparently, is trust. He scoffed. So now you're punishing me? I'm protecting myself, I replied. That's when his tone shifted. Not anger, fear. I grew up watching my mom struggle, he said. My dad never made anything work. We were always one problem away from disaster. I listened, arms folded, breathing steady. When I met you, he continued, you were just solid, stable. Then I learned about your family, and for the first time, I felt like maybe I didn't have to worry all the time. So you planned around it, I said. No, he snapped. I planned with it in mind. I held his gaze. You planned how to access it. He stepped closer. I'm not a gold digger. I let out a slow breath. A gold digger is honest about the transaction. You convinced me you loved me for me. He opened his mouth, closed it. Then, quietly, I do love you. You love the idea of me, I said. The version that comes with a safety net you don't control. He shook his head. You could get it back. There it was. If you asked your dad, he continued quickly, he'd put you back in the will. This is temporary. You're just proving a point. I stared at him. You just said the quiet part out loud, I replied. He went still. You weren't worried about security, I said. You were worried I took something off the table. That's not fair. It's accurate. He tried a different angle then. Apologies. Softening his voice, talking about stress, about pressure, about how everyone around him kept telling him to think ahead. I panicked, he said. My friend went through a brutal divorce, lost everything. You don't gamble, I said. You don't blow money. That story doesn't apply to me. I know, he said quickly. I know, I'm just being stupid. I didn't respond. He reached for my hands. I didn't pull away, but I didn't squeeze back either. I don't want to lose you, he said. I looked at our joined hands and felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. You already lost me, I said quietly. The moment you treated my family's future like a contingency plan. He let go. That night, he packed a bag and went to stay with a friend. Not dramatically, not in tears. Just stiff movements, forced calm, the sound of a zipper closing. As the door shut behind him, the apartment fell silent. I stood there longer than I needed to, heart steady, hands still trembling. I didn't cry. I sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the wall, replaying every conversation I'd dismissed, every comment I'd brushed aside. The red flags hadn't been hidden. I just hadn't wanted to see them. And somewhere between the quiet and the clarity, I understood something else. This wasn't over. Not even close. The next week was educational in the worst possible way. Once he left, the silence didn't bring peace. It created space. And into that space came pressure. Relentless. Coordinated. Strategic. It started with messages. The first was from him, late the next morning. I've been thinking. You're right. The prenup is smart. We should both get lawyers and do this properly. I stared at the screen, waiting for the second half. It came a few minutes later. But you should probably get back into your parents' will. It's not fair to put everything on your sister someday. I didn't respond. That afternoon, another message followed. You don't have to decide anything right now. Just talk to your dad. I set my phone face down on my desk and went back to work. By Wednesday, the calls started. His mother left a voicemail. Long, emotional, carefully controlled. She talked about how devastated he was, how he wasn't sleeping, how he felt humiliated in front of his family, how marriage meant sharing everything, how trust was the foundation of a successful relationship. She never once mentioned the lawyer. She never once mentioned inheritance. The implication hung in the air anyway. I didn't call back. Thursday morning, another message, this one from his brother. You're blowing this out of proportion. He's just trying to protect his future. Protect it from what, I wondered? From me not handing it over? That night, my fiancé showed up unannounced. He didn't knock loudly. He didn't make a scene. He stood in the doorway with a controlled expression, hands in his jacket pockets like he was trying to keep himself contained. I just want to talk, he said. I stepped aside and let him in. He sat on the edge of the couch, didn't lean back, didn't get comfortable. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he began. I get why you reacted the way you did. I crossed my arms and waited. I handled it poorly, he admitted. I should have talked to you before seeing a lawyer. Yes, I said. But, he continued quickly, you have to see it from my side too. Marriage is about planning. Planning with your partner, I replied, not planning around their family's assets. He exhaled through his nose, frustration flickering beneath the calm. I don't want money, he said. I want stability. You want access, I corrected. His jaw tightened. That's not fair. Then explain why every solution you propose involves me changing my parents' legal decisions, I said. He had no answer. Instead, he pivoted. What about your sister? He asked. Do you really think it's fair to put everything on her? That's between my parents and my sister, I replied. Not you. He shook his head slowly. You're being stubborn. No, I said. I'm being clear. That word again. Clear. It didn't sit well with him. The next day, I came home to find my laptop open on the coffee table. Not snooped through, not moved. Just open. The lease agreement was pulled up on the screen. My chest tightened. He stood in the kitchen, arms folded, posture stiff. I was just trying to understand where we stand legally, he said. You opened my laptop without asking, I replied. I live here too. Not anymore, I said. He stared at me. So that's it? 3 years and you're done? I'm done being treated like a financial strategy, I said. He laughed once, short, bitter. You've changed, he said. You're cold now. No, I replied. I've stopped negotiating with someone who doesn't respect boundaries. That's when he finally left for real. Not to a friend's place this time. He took boxes, clothes, shoes, the things that were unquestionably his. The next morning, the wedding venue called. Your fiancé reached out to cancel, the coordinator said carefully. She asked about refunding the deposit to her account. I paid the deposit, I replied. Yes, she said. That's why we're calling you. I closed my eyes. Please keep the date for now, I said. I'll confirm by Friday. When I hung up, my phone buzzed again. An email. Subject line, formal request. He wanted reimbursement for wedding expenses he hadn't paid. Compensation for emotional distress. 3 months of living expenses for what he claimed was an illegal eviction. I forwarded it to my cousin, a lawyer. He called me laughing. Please tell me you're not considering this. No, I said, I just want it documented. By Saturday, social media got involved. He posted a carefully worded story about betrayal, about being abandoned, about how his fiancée had turned cold and paranoid after getting engaged. Comments flooded in. Support, sympathy, assumptions. I posted nothing. I didn't need to, because by then, I had already seen how far he was willing to go. And I knew this escalation wasn't about saving our relationship anymore. It was about control, and he wasn't done trying to take it back. The darkest moments aren't loud. They arrive quietly, in the hours when no one is watching, when your phone finally stops buzzing and your thoughts have nowhere left to hide. By Sunday night, the apartment felt unfamiliar. Not empty, just exposed. Every corner held a memory, a routine, a version of myself that had trusted without question. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind replayed conversations I'd dismissed, jokes I'd laughed off, the way he'd tilt his head whenever money came up, like he was measuring something invisible, the way his family had spoken around me, never directly to me, as if decisions about my life were already being discussed elsewhere. Monday morning, I woke up to a notification from my sister. Have you seen what he's posting? I hadn't. I didn't want to. But I clicked anyway. It was subtle, carefully crafted, no names, no accusations that could get him in trouble, just implication. When you think you're building a future with someone, and they suddenly change. Trust your instincts, gentlemen. Not everyone values commitment. The comments were worse. People filled in the blanks themselves. I closed the app and sat there, phone heavy in my hand, heart beating slower than I expected. Not panic. Resolve. But the cost of that resolve hit later that afternoon. I went back to the apartment while he was at work, not to pack, just to think, to organize my thoughts, to figure out next steps. That's when I found it. In his desk drawer, beneath old receipts and a broken charger. Printed emails, 3 of them, an exchange between him and the lawyer he'd met with. The first email was dated 3 weeks before the lunch meeting he'd told me about. I need to understand inheritance laws and marital property rights. My fiancé's family has substantial assets. The lawyer's reply was polite, informational, thorough. Our consultation can cover spousal rights to inherited assets, commingling concerns, and strategic planning. Then his response. Perfect. Also interested in what happens with no prenup versus a standard prenup. 3 weeks. He hadn't panicked. He hadn't reacted impulsively. He'd planned. My hands didn't shake as I took photos of everything. I felt hollow. When he came home that evening, I was sitting at the table with the lease agreement spread out in front of me. He stopped in the doorway. What's that for? He asked. Figuring out the penalty for breaking it, I said. He sat down slowly, carefully. Please don't do this, he said. We can fix this. I slid my phone across the table and watched his face change as he read the emails. That's not, he started. You consulted a lawyer about my inheritance 3 weeks before you met with him, I said. This wasn't fear. This was strategy. How did you even... Doesn't matter, I cut in. What matters is you were planning how to access my family's money before we even set a wedding date. It would have been ours, he said. Inheritance is separate property unless it's commingled, I replied. Your lawyer should have told you that. He went quiet. Then, desperate, he said there were ways around it. The room went still. Ways around it, I repeated. That's not what I meant, he said quickly. What did you mean? I asked. He rubbed his face with both hands. Exhaled. I grew up watching my mom struggle, he said. We never had stability. When I met you, you were just good, solid. Then I learned about your family and I thought, finally, I wouldn't have to worry anymore. So you fell in love with my family's bank account, I said. No, he said. I fell in love with you. The money just made me feel safe. Safe enough to plan how to get access to it, I replied. I'm not a gold digger. No, I said quietly. You're worse. A gold digger is honest. You convinced me you loved me for me. He reached for my hands. I do love you. You love the idea of me, I said. The version that comes with something you think you're entitled to. You could get it back, he said. Your dad would put you back in the will if you asked. There it was. The truth. Get out, I said. What? Pack a bag, I said. Go to your parents' place, or a friend's. I'll give you a week to find somewhere else. This is my apartment, too. Your name isn't on the lease, I replied. You're month to month at best. You've changed, he said. You're cold. No, I said. I've become aware. He packed while muttering about futures and regret, about how I'd end up alone. When the door finally closed, I didn't collapse. I sat there in the silence, heart steady, hands still. This wasn't grief. This was clarity, and it hurt like hell. The shift didn't come with relief. It came with momentum. Once he was gone, the story stopped being something I reacted to and became something I had to manage. Wednesday morning, my phone rang while I was reviewing emails. The wedding venue, I knew before I answered. Hi, the coordinator said carefully. Your fiancé reached out yesterday. He asked about canceling the reservation and having the deposit refunded to his account. I paid the deposit, I said. Yes, she replied. That's why we're calling you. I took a breath. Please keep the date for now, I said. I'll confirm by Friday. When the call ended, something clicked into place. This wasn't confusion anymore. This was entitlement. That afternoon, his father showed up at my office without warning. He stood in the lobby like he belonged there, arms crossed, jaw tight. We need to talk, he said, adult to adult. About what? I asked. About you destroying my son over a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, I replied calmly. He consulted a lawyer about my inheritance before we finalized wedding plans. He was being responsible, his father snapped. You embarrassed him. By removing myself from my parents' will? I asked. That decision doesn't involve your son. He leaned closer. You need to fix this. Get back into that will. Marry him. Stop playing games. Or what? I asked. His eyes hardened. Or people will hear a very different story about you. Good, I said. Tell them everything. He faltered. Tell them he met with lawyers about money that isn't his, I continued. Tell them he tried to cancel a wedding deposit he didn't pay. Tell them he asked me to pressure my parents to rewrite legal documents. He left without another word. Friday morning, an email arrived. Subject line, formal demand. He wanted reimbursement for wedding expenses he hadn't paid, compensation for emotional distress, 3 months of living expenses for what he called an illegal eviction, and the engagement ring back. The ring he had given me. I forwarded the email to my cousin who practices family law. I didn't ask for advice. I didn't need reassurance. I wanted a record, someone objective, someone outside the noise. He confirmed what I already knew. The demands were baseless. The threats were empty. And for the first time since this started, I felt something solid settle in my chest. Not anger. Certainty. Saturday, the narrative went public. A post appeared on his social media, carefully vague, emotionally loaded. Talk of betrayal, of abandonment, of being thrown out. Support poured in. I stayed silent. I didn't need to speak, because my sister did. She posted screenshots. The emails with the lawyer, a message from his brother suggesting emotional pressure if logic didn't work, and one sentence beneath it all. When you try to rob my family, then play victim. The comment section erupted. Some people doubled down, others quietly deleted their posts. Silence spread faster than defense. Sunday evening, his mother called, crying. You've ruined his reputation, she said. How could you let your sister do this? I didn't let her do anything, I replied. She's an adult. Make her take it down. It's not my post. You'll be sued for defamation. Truth is an absolute defense, I said. Your son wrote those emails. The line went dead. Monday morning, today as I write this, the final boundary was crossed. At 7 a.m., my doorbell rang. Outside stood my ex-fiancé, a U-Haul idling behind him, 3 movers waiting for instructions. He was pointing at my furniture. That couch is mine, he said. I have the receipts, I replied. The movers froze. You're supposed to be at work, he snapped. Schedule changed, I said, and this is unlawful entry. I lived here. Past tense. When he tried to step inside, I moved aside and called the police. I need assistance, I said evenly. My ex-fiancé is refusing to leave my apartment. His face drained of color. The movers backed away immediately. He ran before the police arrived, leaving the U-Haul idling in the lot. That was the moment it ended. Not with tears, not with regret, but with proof. The aftermath didn't explode. It unraveled. Slowly, publicly, and entirely without my involvement. The morning after the U-Haul incident, my phone buzzed nonstop. Not with messages demanding explanations, but with notifications I didn't open. Mentions, tags, screenshots forwarded by people who had clearly just discovered the truth and didn't know what to do with it. I muted everything. Silence this time was deliberate. By Tuesday, the tone online had shifted. The vague sympathy posts were gone. So were the righteous declarations about loyalty and commitment. In their place were questions, quiet edits, comments disappearing without explanation. People didn't apologize. They just retreated. That afternoon, I received a text from a mutual acquaintance. "Hey, I didn't know the full story. I'm sorry." I didn't reply. I wasn't interested in retroactive clarity. By Wednesday, his family tried a different approach. His brother sent a message first, short, defensive. "You didn't have to let this get so public." I stared at it for a long moment before typing back. "I didn't make it public. I stopped covering for it." No response. His mother followed later that evening. This time, no tears, just cold restraint. "We're very disappointed in how you handled this." I read it once, then archived the thread. Because disappointment only holds power when you value the opinion. Thursday morning, my cousin called again, not amused this time. "They're testing boundaries," he said. "Your ex's father contacted a colleague asking about options." "Options for what?" I asked. "Intimidation," he replied. "They don't have a case, but they want to scare you into backing down." I felt nothing. "Document everything," I said. "I am," he confirmed. "If they keep this up, we can file for harassment." By Friday, the rumors started. Not online, offline. Whispered, carefully worded. That I was unstable, that I'd manipulated the situation, that I'd hidden assets and played legal games. It didn't stick. People who actually knew me didn't buy it. You can't rewrite reality when there's documentation. The final attempt came that weekend. Saturday morning, there was a knock at my door. I didn't open it. Through the peephole, I saw his father standing stiffly in the hallway, hands clasped behind his back like he was waiting to be acknowledged. He knocked again. I stayed silent. After a few minutes, he left. No confrontation, no dramatic speech. Just another closed door he hadn't expected. Sunday brought the last piece of fallout I hadn't anticipated. The wedding venue called. "I wanted to let you know," the coordinator said gently. "We had another couple interested in your date. A friend of yours, actually." I smiled despite myself. "Go ahead," I said. "Transfer the reservation." They paid the difference. I lost nothing. A week later, I attended that wedding. Different couple, same room, new energy. It was beautiful, simple, honest, joyful in a way mine never would have been. I didn't think about him once. Not until Monday, when a friend forwarded me a screenshot. My ex was engaged again. Already. A woman he'd met on a dating app. Older, wealthy, recently divorced. Her bio mentioned travel, luxury, and traditional values. The caption beneath his post read, "When you know, you know." I closed the image without comment. Good luck, I thought. Not sarcastically. Just final. A few days later, my dad called. "I put you back in the will," he said, "with provisions." I smiled. "Of course you did." Any inheritance would now be held in trust, inaccessible to a spouse for 5 years after marriage. "Smart man," I said. He laughed. "Learned something from all this." So had I. The harassment tapered off after that. No more messages, no more threats, just distance. As for me, I reclaimed my routines. Work, therapy, evenings that belonged to no one but me. The ring came next. I didn't sell it. I didn't make a moment out of it. I placed it back in its box and mailed it to his parents with no note attached. Not as a message, not as a statement. Just a boundary. I didn't want anything from him. Not memories, not explanations, not symbols. Returning it wasn't about closure. It was about finality. The first night I watched a movie there, I laughed quietly to myself. It wasn't petty. It was poetic. Looking back, the signs had always been there. The jokes about being set for life. The sudden interest in my parents' finances. The way love turned conditional the moment he thought he'd secured access. I thought he meant us. He meant inheritance. And I'm grateful, deeply, honestly grateful, that he showed his hand before the wedding. Some lessons cost far more. Healing didn't arrive as a breakthrough. It arrived quietly, in small, ordinary moments that added up to something solid. Mornings without checking my phone first. Evenings where the apartment felt calm instead of tense. Conversations that didn't circle money, pressure, or expectation. I stayed in therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I'd ignored the early signs, why I'd confused consistency with integrity, why I'd assumed love meant alignment instead of verifying it. The answer wasn't complicated. I wanted to believe. Belief is powerful. It fills in gaps, softens edges. It tells you that reasonable discomfort is just growth. But belief unchecked can also blind you. I didn't lose a fiancé. I avoided a future where love came with conditions, where security was measured in access, where my family's work became someone else's entitlement. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was accepting that the person I trusted most had been quietly negotiating a version of my life without me. That realization changed how I listen now. I listen for tone, not words, for patterns, not promises, for how someone reacts when a door closes, not when it opens. Because character shows itself most clearly when access is denied. My parents joke about it sometimes. My sister still calls it the $1,000,000 lesson. I let them laugh. But privately, I know the truth. It didn't cost me anything. It saved me everything. If there's a lesson here, it's not about money. It's about boundaries. If someone starts planning around assets that aren't theirs, pause. If their family treats your future like a shared investment, pause. If love becomes conditional the moment control is removed, walk away. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just completely. I don't regret how this ended. I regret only that I almost talked myself out of trusting my instincts, but I didn't. And because of that, I didn't walk into a marriage already negotiating my own worth. I walked out with clarity. And that, more than any inheritance, was the real security. If this story resonated with you, you're not alone. These moments, the quiet realizations, the red flags we almost ignore, the strength it takes to walk away, are more common than we think. And every time you share your perspective, your experience, or even your silence in the comments, it reminds us why these stories matter. Our team reads your feedback. We listen. We adjust. Because this channel isn't just about drama. It's about truth, boundaries, and the lessons we don't learn until life forces us to. If you've lived through something similar, feel free to share your story below. You never know who might read it and realize they're not imagining things, or that it's okay to choose themselves. If you want YouTube to keep showing you stories like this, slow burn, emotional, and honest, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and join this community. It tells the algorithm that these conversations are worth keeping alive. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And now, take a breath. The story ends here, but the clarity is just beginning. He froze. That's different, he said. No, I replied. It's exactly the same. And for the first time since we got engaged, I watched him realize the plan he'd been quietly building no longer had a foundation.